Hi guys, my name's Hayden Marcar here at Professional Sterling Clark. I'm the leasing consultant. Right now you've signed up with us, so congratulations. I'm now going to go through the lease with you. Here is your residential tenancy agreement. Terms of agreement, tenancy start and finish date. You have agreed for electronic communications via correspondence with our office via email. Number of occupants will not exceed the maximum number in this section here. Rent will be in here, starting on the start date. Please make sure with all payments that you attach the alpha reference that you've been given, which is personalised for you. If you do not attach this reference, your funds may not be allocated to the property. Security bond, section here, and for pet bond, there. There will be no rent increase during this period of tenancy. Water usage costs. The tenant is liable for 100% of the water consumption. The tenant is responsible to connect their gas, electricity accounts. They will need to be done prior to you moving into the property. In this section, you'll find the pets that have been approved for the property. No other pets are allowed to be at the property. Right of a tenant to assign or sublet. You cannot sublet at all without permission. Right of a tenant to affix and remove fixtures. You cannot alter or change the property without permission. Property condition report. You'll be given a property condition report upon receiving your keys. You have 7 days to go through this report and make sure you agree with all things in the report. If not, please make a change, and you then have 7 days to return that to our office. These are the standard terms applicable to all residential tenancy agreements. Right to occupy the premises. You have the right to occupy the property. Copy of agreement. You will be given a copy of this agreement. Rent. Rent is payable 1 week in advance at all times. Payment of council rates and land tax, water and other charges. All rates are payable by the owner. Public utility services. Utilities are payable by the tenant. Possession of the premises. You'll be given vacant possession of the property. Tenant's right to quiet enjoyment. Use of the premise by the tenant. The property cannot be used for anything illegal. Lessors general obligations for residential premises. You have inspected the property and accepting it on an as-is basis. Urgent repairs. They are defined in your emergency repairs procedure. However, all repairs must be reported immediately. Access to the premises. We have a key to do routine inspections. We give 7 to 14 days notice for inspections via email. You are entitled to be present at all inspections. Again, don't alter the property without permission. Locks and security devices. You cannot change the locks without prior permission. Do not sublet without prior permission also. Ending a fixed term agreement, you must give 30 days notice if you wish to vacate the end of the lease, in writing. Ending a periodic agreement, periodic is 21 days notice. The bond is held by the bond administration. Tenancy databases, if you do not pay your rent, we have the right to lodge you in a tenancy database, making it difficult to you to get a rental in the future. If you need any advice or have complaints and disputes, please contact the Department of Mines. And if it cannot be resolved, it goes through the Magistrates Court. Bond, pet bond, and 2 weeks rent need to be paid by the date in this section here. Rent is payable 1 week in advance at all times. No rent reviews during the period of tenancy. If it goes to periodical, we can increase the rent to $50 more than what your rent is. This is why it is important to renew your lease at the end of the tenancy. Pets, no additional pets without permission. Pet bond is held with the bond administration. Smoking, no smoking inside the premises at all times. Services, must notify gas and electricity. Telephone, tenant's decision if they wish to use the phone line, owner is not responsible. The tenant is responsible to keep the premises clean. Chasseurs, any fixtures or fittings at the property need to be maintained. RCDs and smoke alarms are compliant. Tenant is responsible for changing light globes. Gardens need to be maintained by the tenant. If there is a pool or spa, the tenant is responsible for the upkeep. If any damages occur to the property, it is the tenant's responsibility to report it to our office. If you cause any damage to the property, you could be liable for the excess of insurance. Don't alter or change the property in any way without permission. No objectionable behaviour, no aquariums without permission. If any damage or injury is caused by not complying with the lease agreement, you indemnify the owner. Inspections are every 3 months, first is after 6 weeks. If you require additional keys, you can cut them from the set you are given, however all keys must be returned when you vacate. You cannot grant the property as an Airbnb. If you wish to move out before the end of your lease, you are liable to pay rent up until the end of the lease period. This is a break lease. At the end of the tenancy, the carpets must be professional cleaned, and if applicable, the pool must be chemically tested. We're attaching annexures A and B to the lease. I'll go through with those now. The tenant agrees to notify agent in writing no less than 30 days before the expiry of their lease intention to vacate the premises or their request to renew their lease. It is acknowledged by the tenant that all maintenance items are to be reported to the office in writing. The tenant is aware that routine inspections will be carried out quarterly. The property is only to be occupied by the tenants whose names appear on the lease, children accepted. The tenant agrees not to place any pot plants directly on the carpets or floorboards. Should there be floorboards at the property, it is a requirement that floor protectors be used. If the owner has agreed to the tenants keeping a pet at the property, at no time is the number of pets to exceed the number indicated on the application. The tenant further agrees that pets must be outdoor pets and not permitted inside the property at any times unless otherwise approved by the owner. The tenant agrees to pay $260 pet bond and to have the property professionally deodorised and sprayed for the fleas at the end of the tenancy. Any damage caused by the pet is to be rectified immediately and reimbursed to the owner. The tenant acknowledges expecting the property prior to acceptance of the application and agrees to take it on an as-is basis. If the property has a pool or spa, the tenant agrees to have it chemically tested and balanced on the last day of the tenancy by a professional pool company and provide a printout of the receipt. The tenant is aware that it is a requirement of this lease to pay rent in advance at all times, or a termination notice may be issued. If the property is reticulated, the tenant is aware that they are responsible for reticulation heads and any pipe works above the surface. If the tenant chooses to break their lease, they will be responsible for the following costs. Rent be paid until the new tenant takes possession or until the lease expires, whichever occurs first. Unexpired portion of the leasing fee. Ongoing maintenance and care of the property until a new tenant is found or the lease expires, whichever occurs first. The tenant is aware and agrees that there is to be no smoking inside the property during the period of tenancy. The tenant is aware that should they choose to pay their rent via internet banking, they must use their personalised reference on every payment. Failure to do so will result in a bank trace fee. The tenant is further aware that any fees associated with dishonoured cheques must be reimbursed to the owner immediately. The tenant is aware and agrees that once the tenant has vacated, rent will be charged up until that time possession of the keys is handed into the office. The tenants agree to provide drip trays at their expense to prevent any oil, grease or petrol leaking from the motor vehicles. The tenants are aware that should they be requested to return to the property once they are vacated, to carry out any vacating requirements, 24 hours will be granted in order for the requesting work to be carried out. Failure to do so will result in a tradesperson being employed with the cost being deducted from the security bond. The tenants are aware and agree that once they vacate, it is their responsibility to put a mail redirection in place. The tenant is aware and agrees that they are responsible for obtaining their own contents insurance. The tenants are aware that they are not responsible for cleaning the gutters to the property. Should the gutters need cleaning, the tenant is to complete a maintenance request form and submit it into our office. The tenants acknowledge receipt of a true copy of the annexure and that it forms part of their signed lease agreement. The tenant is aware and agrees that if they are using a dryer in the laundry, adequate ventilation must be provided. Failure to do so will result in damp damage and the tenant will reimburse the owner of the cost of rectification. The tenant is aware that if the rent is paid via bank transfer or rent pay, that no receipts will be issued. The tenant is aware that parking any vehicles on the lawn or gardens at the front or rear of the property is a breach of agreement. The cost of any treatments or repairs or to reticulation required as a result of this will be reimbursed by the tenant to the owner. If the property has gardens that have been freshly mulched, the tenants will be required to mulch the gardens when they vacate. Rent arrears policy. 1 day in arrears, text message, email or phone call. 2 days in arrears, notice of termination issued. 7 days to bring your rent up to date or vacate the property. If you have been approved for a pet, the details are here and these are the conditions. The tenant must be a responsible pet owner. If the premises are part of a strata scheme and the strata owner resolves that the pets cannot be kept on the strata lot comprising the premises, then the tenant must remove the pet from the premises. If the tenant breaches these conditions and fails to remedy any breach within 14 days after written notice of a breach has been given, then the tenant must immediately remove the pet from the premises. The tenant agrees to abide by any laws or bylaws of the local government authority relating to pets. Any additional or replacement pets must be approved by the lessor in writing and if approved will be subject to these conditions. The lessor may at any time request a photograph of the pet. The lessor and the tenant agree that the pet must be kept clean, quiet and controlled at all times, be free of parasites and disease, be domesticated, do not disturb neighbours or other tenants or other pets, not wander unsupervised except for a cat, which must be kept indoors at night, be toilet trained, receive appropriate veterinary care where required, be under control or on a lead when passing through any common property so that the pet does not disturb other tenants, their visitors or other pets. All areas where the pet resides must be free from parasites. The tenant must promptly pick up and dispose all faeces in an appropriate bag and have them placed in a rubbish bin and wash away urine from the outdoor areas. The tenant is liable for any damage or injury caused by the pet to the premises. Damages include destruction or damage to the garden, lawn, reticulation and courtyard areas. If the fences are not effective at enclosing the pet, then the tenant must make alternative arrangements to accommodate the pet. If the fence is damaged, not by the tenant or pet, and becomes inadequate to enclose the pet, then the tenant must A. promptly notify the lessor's agent, and B. make alternative arrangements to accommodate the pet until the fence is repaired. If the pet is capable of carrying parasites that can affect humans, then the tenant agrees to increase the security bond by $260, which is the pet bond. Thank you for going through the tenancy agreement with me. If you have any other queries or questions, please make sure to notify your property manager. We do look forward to a great tenancy.